Hello. This hypothetical utopia is about aliens, alien civilizations, and encounters thereof. As always, I'm gonna try to wrap this topic in with the whole ethical, moral, complexity maximizing side. But effectively, what I'm going to talk about is the Fermi paradox and the prospect of encountering alien civilizations and what that means ethically. Because it means a lot ethically. See, the thing is, with most of the stuff that I've talked about, most of the stuff regarding utopias, it's usually thought of as a political thing, less so of a technological thing. But you know, even the other stuff I've talked about in the past here, it's most of those problems, you know, they're pretty small, all things considered. They're pretty small because, in effect, they can be solved. You know, technology, right? You can develop a certain level of technology that could fix most, you know, problems. Most diseases can be eradicated. You know, most scarcity can be pretty much abolished. Transhumanist technologies could increase people's intelligence. We could decide, you know, people could look however they want. You know, certain political solutions could, you know, redistribute wealth and all that. All of that is fixable. It's very easily fixable. Okay, it's not easily fixable. It's not trivial, sure, but it is fixable. It can be corrected. It's entirely viable. You know, so when we're talking about a utopia, we are at least talking about that stuff. There is, however, another category of stuff that is not so easily fixable, not just because of political constraints or cultural constraints or even technology that doesn't exist yet, but simply because the laws of the known universe are themselves constraints as we understand them now. And unless we figure out a way to work around them or through them, or breaking through that barrier is going to become pretty much impossible. And one of the things related to that is the prospect of encountering an alien species. So there's this thing related to that called the Fermi paradox, which is pretty much a paradox that puts into question the fact that the chances of an alien species existing is so high. However, there's literally no evidence of them existing, so what gives? Why is that the case? Like, why have we not... I've actually, like, wondered about this fairly recently with a bunch of people. I'm like, why have we not detected aliens? That could mean very many things. It could mean very bad things, but theoretically, the chances of alien species existing is fairly high. There could be anywhere between, like, 1,000 to 1,000,000 civilizations out there in the world, in the galaxy, in our galaxy alone. You know, they estimate that with, like, the Drake equation, which is supposed to tell you, you know, it's supposed to multiply various probabilities together to give us the probability of there being a planet that has an alien species, and we can just multiply that by the total number of planets in the galaxy. Estimations again, but there's, like, quadrillion, there's lots, there's over billions and billions, and that should still give us a pretty high number of possible alien species. So what we need to look at is we need to look at, like, the however many stars there are, what percentage of those stars, you know, have planets, which percentage of those stars have planets that exist within a certain zone, which percentage of those you know, planets can bear life, they have the necessary chemistry, the necessary atmosphere, the necessary geology, so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of factors, right? But once you measure them all, you should still get a pretty high number, at least estimates have. So, the question is, why haven't we seen any aliens, right? And the number of reasons could be huge. It could be, of course, it could be, there's always a chance that the estimates are just wrong. The real, again, they're just estimates. It could be that the actual chance is astronomically low, because once you weigh all the little things, you know, not just there could be a lot of factors that we're just not looking into. You know, the magnetosphere, the chance of the planet not being too far or having, like, a gas giant next to it that could prevent it from being hit by asteroids and stuff like that. The chances of the planet having the right temperature, having like glaciation, and the other thing is we don't fully understand how life formed on Earth, at least mechanically. That's still not totally understood. So we'd have to perfectly understand that to have a good understanding of what the chances are of life forming on other planets. But then again, so just automatically our estimates could be wrong. That's one of the possibilities. It could be that's one of the potential problems. Another problem could be that there simply haven't been any intelligent species. There's been life, but no intelligent species. Because remember, alien doesn't necessarily mean intelligent aliens, right? It could be, it could just be random ass life like what developed here on Earth, that type of thing is hard to detect as well. Of course, we could weigh that and multiply that by the probability. I'm pretty sure even that would still get us, at least several civilizations. It's weird. There's the possibility that the aliens don't have advanced technology. There's the possibility that we can't detect them, or they can't detect us, or they're still young. There's the possibility that pretty much the aliens, they're created and they're intelligent, but they take a long time to think or to evolve or to put thoughts together. There's a whole bunch of possibilities. There is a possibility that we are literally the first ones to have reached this level, which isn't too extreme, considering the fact that the Earth is like 4.5 billion years old. Humans have been around for millions of years, and we were already intelligent at that point. So how many intelligent species have had a civilization, that civilization that created technology, that's still like, that's still a few steps forward. So it could be you've had alien species, you've even had, the amount of time since life emerged on Earth billions of years ago to the point now where we have radio communication, that's still billions of years. So, and the Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. The Milky Way is really old, but still, you'd think that it's a long enough period of time that we may not have... We might have other planets that have life, and that might be fairly high, but that life might be so early in its stages of development that there's no intelligent life there. So there's possibilities like that. There's all these little factors. There's the chance... I'm just going to go into it because it's like... It's sort of interesting, and it's sort of part of my purpose here. Let's see. You could posit that we simply can't communicate with them. There could be a bunch of barriers for that. For one, we've only had radio communication for like 100 years, and that means at best our signals have traveled 100 light years, which is not very far for a galactic scaling. That's not very far. It would mean is there an alien species within 100 light years that could have picked up our signals? Of course, the thing is, what SETI is doing is mostly trying to detect signals rather than emit them. So that could be another problem, is that we're not emitting anything, but we're just trying to detect them when they don't want to be detected, or we haven't detected them, or what else? Or we're not detecting their frequency probably. We're trying to look at radio signals, right? First of all, they might not even communicate with radio. They might have some other more advanced form of communication. They could, we could be listening to the wrong frequencies. We could be listening in the wrong area, because where you're listening also is important when it comes to finding the signal. The signal could be drowned out by other shit. It's just like, there's a million things that could get in the way. There's of course also the chance that they're listening also and not emitting anything like us. And so we're all, there's that assumption, right? That we're all doing the same thing. We're all just sitting there listening and hearing nothing. That would be so stupid if that was actually what was happening. If all the alien species in the galaxy were just sitting there listening, and we didn't find each other for like billions of years because we were all too stupid. So that could be a thing. We're not listening properly. we haven't existed long enough. You know, they could be purposefully avoiding other alien species simply because they've done stuff. They've tried first contact in the past and it hasn't gone well, so now they're purposefully avoiding it. You know, so on and so forth. There could be they could have seen us but been like, yeah, we don't need that. We're just gonna sit by. I actually don't think that's the case. I think that one is probably less likely unless they've had some sort of bad history with first contact, which, I mean, that would depend. It depends on the number of civilizations. It could be the case that there could be a whole bunch of there could be a whole bunch of weird situations that are happening with their species. For one, they might not communicate. Like, for instance, there could be messages, we just don't understand what they are. Like, maybe they don't, again, they could be super alien, right? They may not have a spoken language. You know, they might just talk, they might just communicate with body language, or they might, like, their thought processes might take, like, years, whereas ours happen in minutes, you know? They might think super slowly. You know, we really don't know how they work, and so the way that they, like, communicate could be so aberrant that any radio message we send is something that they wouldn't even understand, or we wouldn't even understand. So that would be an impediment. There's the possibility that... What else? Yeah, pretty much... I think that's pretty much it. Like, those are the options that would prevent... Would make... Oh, they might not be communicating because they might be, like... Instead of trying to expand into space, they might have reached the fifth epoch of evolution, or the futurists, like, fifth epoch of evolution, and just, like, they're all living in some sort of virtual reality that they've constructed for themselves. Which is actually another interesting hypothetical utopia that might talk about at another point. Although it's fairly well related with the mega consciousness thing I've already talked about. There's not much to say about it. It's a world where everyone lives in a virtual reality. And then who creates the virtual realities? Or updates them? It's a separate issue. But yeah, that's like an option. And that's very... The problem is, that option, none of these options bode well, because it means they've effectively... They're all reasons to give up on trying to contact aliens. If they've just decided to isolate themselves and live in VR. We could end up doing that. You know, we could end up, if we give up on trying to contact aliens, we could end up just creating VR and living in those VRs. And that's going to be, that's not an ideal world, simply due to the fact that there's no attempt within a world like that to try and conquer the other constraints, right? So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but in general, I think that no matter what, there should always be some sort of drive to try and expand interstellarly. There should always be an attempt at expanding into space, because that is an avenue for complexity maximization that is currently just not being used, right? That is something that we should do. A world where we're all living in virtual realities is, in a way, it's a little anemic, actually, because it's like we've just forsaken reality. It's a little sad. It's better in some ways than what we have now. It's definitely better than nothing. It's not ideal, though. Ideal is a constant growth and expansion. Right. The other constraints. What other constraints do we have? So, okay, it could be the case that they're so advanced that they don't care about us, which I think is, you know, probably, they could want to avoid us. They could, you know, maybe, and there's cynical interpretations that say that every sufficiently intelligent species destroys itself because of nuclear winter or something. Or maybe every intelligent species there's intelligent species out there that's destroying other intelligent species. Or maybe it's just they've given up on trying to expand because it's too expensive, because there's no way to travel faster than light. I'm going to talk about the last part first, but first of all, I just want to dispense with this idea that the aliens could be destroying each other or themselves, and that's why we haven't seen any, because they've all died. I really, really strongly disagree with that prospect because of the uniformity of motive. I think that what happens when you enter the interstellar age, when you enter the prospect of stellar expansion, the prospect of alien civilizations, is a prospect that I think hoists the complexity maximizing motive into everyone's lap, at which point nobody could really... The point is, when you're dealing with a problem like that, all other problems are set aside, which is why I started this by pointing out how all that other shit to do with utopias, those are pretty small problems. If we discover an alien species tomorrow, you'd have no doubt that that would create a certain level of community amongst humans that was previously didn't exist. We would be driven closer together because now we know that we're not alone in the universe. That's how complexity maximization works. You know, who are we to worry about petty conflicts between ourselves when there's all this other shit that's happening? You know, in some ways, the arrival of aliens could do just that, as it could unite humanity, which would be a very good thing. Of course, why we'd need to be united to hopefully not to fight them, but you know, to interact with them, we might get united. And that would be a very good thing. So the point I'm making is I don't see any reason why an alien species that's expanding through space would be imperialistic or even harmful or destructive. I see the whole thing as like complexity maximization. There would have to be a uniformity of motive for a species to even get to that place, that to be able to arrive at interstellar travel. That species would have to be able to cooperate within itself, right? They would the species, the members of the species would have to be able to cooperate with each other in order to reach that point. You know, let alone to expand in space. Think about what a gargantuan task that is, right? The chances that there would be conflicts with other species. See, here's the thing. The thing with when it comes to alien contact is you can pretty much be assured that no matter what differences you have with the aliens, that when it comes to alien contact, their motives and your motives are exactly the same. Which is that you are looking for an opportunity to expand and to make your species stronger by learning something from this other species. It makes no sense for us to go into a conflict with another alien species, right? Why would we want to do that? So by that logic, I think it's totally fair to just assume that they have the exact same logic. Why would they want to come into a conflict with us? What purpose would that have for them? Well, it's like, well, they could destroy the planet and then just take all the resources, but we are the resources, though. Like, our intelligence is part of the resources, and our autonomy and our ability to grow is itself a resource for them. Right? That's the whole purpose of this complexity maximization. We're stronger together than we are by ourselves. The only case this wouldn't matter is if they literally don't care about us, that we're primitives compared to them. And, I mean, I suppose that's a possibility. But at that point, that's like really... They would have to be way, 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 way further advanced. That they'd have to be basically gods to just not give a shit about what we're doing. That they could just do with our planet what they will. If they're anything like us, like at our level of technology, or even slightly above it, I think it's safe to assume that they have the exact same intentions. Yeah, it's just, it wouldn't make any sense to have any other intention in their position. What other intentions could they have, right? We do not... What are our intentions with aliens? Well, we want to learn about them, because that learning about them tells us something about who we are and our place in the universe. And the same thing could be applied backwards, or vice versa. Unless, of course, they've encountered many other alien species themselves and are now, like... They've encountered many alien species themselves, and so, you know, we're just another one in the bucket or something, another drop in the bucket, you know. Then sure. But again, there's all these possibilities that emerge. I'm just saying... Imagine it's one species and another species encountering. There's no reason for them to have different motives, right? In fact, I think that's like you know, when tribes, early human tribes would come and meet each other, it would be a similar thing. They didn't have violent instincts from the beginning, right? They didn't know anything about each other. Their first instinct was curiosity. That's the first thing that shows up. But then, you know, there's miscommunications, there's mistakes, somebody does something wrong, somebody, you know, violates a tradition, or something goes wrong unintentionally, it's uncorrected, and then that creates a conflict, and that conflict leads to years and years of perpetual conflict and hate, which creates a culture of hate, which then teaches that tribe to dehumanize and treat other tribes as trash. And that's how that type of thing happens. I don't think it naturally emerges. So any argument about, like, oh, that's just the natural state of thing, no, it's not. That's nonsense. The real way this would go down is, you know, there'd be no reason unless this species has had millennia of experience of eradicating other species for some reason. But even that, there's no reason to assume, right? There's no reason to assume that that's the case, even with number, right? Because I think there's another element here, which is just like the act of expanding into space is such a monumental task that I don't think it could happen if the species weren't cooperating. Like, if they didn't have the kind of solidarity that I preach about in my other videos, if they didn't have that kind of community, if they were competing with each other on a physical level, there's no way it could work. You know, I think the only way that such a task could be undergone is if the species were as cooperative and intimate as possible with one another. And if that was the case, well, then we have nothing to worry about. So pretty much, if the idea is that there's lots of alien species out there, we have nothing to worry about. There's pretty much nothing to worry about either way. The worry has to do with the fact that we haven't encountered any. Because pretty much what I'm doing is I'm just brushing off the possibility, the cynical interpretations that the aliens are killing themselves or each other or whatever. It is, of course, possible that any intelligent species ends up destroying itself. That is still possible. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that's not the case. But that is still possible. The other options are, of course, that aliens are just... we're just too far away from each other. They exist, but we're too far away from each other. And it's too expensive to try and travel. Lord knows we don't have the technology to make interstellar flights happen. And even if we did, it would take decades to get to the nearest star. Not even close, because we can't even move close at the speed of light, right? So, you know, this runs into one of those constraints I was talking about, which is the fact that one of the constraints is the speed of light, and the fact that things are so far apart in our galaxy, our universe, that the only way to really expand beyond this planet is to be able to travel faster than the speed of light, to be able to somehow bend space and time and move at the speed where you don't have to worry about that constraint. Maybe you fold the space in front of you and stretch out the space behind you so that you move faster through space. You somehow figure out a way to fold and bend space-time. That's short. Maybe there's an option like that. But the point is, it's bleak. That's the problem with it. The idea is very bleak. You know, if we encounter an alien species, that's the thing. That still doesn't necessarily suggest that we could travel faster than the speed of light, because traveling faster than the speed of light is, again, the only way to do it within physics would be to fold space, which is not even like it's still just like a hypothetical thing that I don't even know too much about. But the problem is it's such a insurmountable thing at the moment. But this is that tier, that next tier of insurmountable constraint, right? Everything before this, everything up until this thing is like not even a real problem, because this constraint is like the big problem. If we could figure out a way to travel fast in the speed of light, then none of the other problems matter. Everything else is trivial compared to this. If we could figure out a way to do this, because then now we know that we could expand pretty much anywhere we have the technology, we have the possibility to expand to pretty much any planet in the galaxy, any galaxy in the universe, for as long as we want because we have the technology, or physically it's possible. It doesn't contradict the laws of physics. And since it doesn't contradict the laws of physics, it can be done. So ethically, it's entirely, there's no reason to panic. So the fact that we haven't encountered an alien species could suggest that alien species are out there, they just haven't reached us. Or because of how long it takes, which means they haven't figured out a way to do it. Which could mean that there is no way to travel fast in the speed of light. And that is my main worry with this whole thing. You know, set aside the fact that they could be, you know, there could be time constraints, or alien species, you know, we exist at different times, so like they'll live and they'll destroy each other before they could emerge, before they could develop, you know, FTL travel. You know, we're not detecting them properly, or blah 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 blah. All this other bullshit. You know, I'm not too concerned with that, but I am mostly concerned with this idea that it could suggest that FTL travel is impossible. I would just like to think, though, that we are just the first species in the galaxy, in the universe, maybe. Well, not in the universe, but maybe the galaxy that has developed this level of technology. Right? After all, it's taken 4.5 billion years, so you might consider that not too many planets like that have existed. Or if they did, they were so far away that any species on them hasn't developed FTL travel yet. But not that it's impossible. Those are the possibilities. There is also a possibility, which is a very interesting one, an explanation, like a multiverse explanation for this whole thing, which is that aliens could basically there's a multiverse. And in every single multiverse, there's a chance that aliens will emerge. However, because of some kind of statistical property, most of the multiverses are likely to have at least one alien species. So there's going to be way more universes that have only one alien species emerge than universes that have more than one, right? In other words, a universe where exactly one alien species emerges is more likely than a universe where more than one emerges because of some statistical, you know, property, because it's less. It's right. In terms of likelihood, you think that is more likely, right? And because of the whole anthropic principle thing, we happen to be in one of those universes. We happen to be in one of the more likely universes where just one intelligent species emerges and no others. We don't happen to live in a universe where there's many others. So that could be an explanation. That, I think, is the most interesting one. Yeah, that I think is the most interesting one, but it could also be that the statistical analysis there isn't exactly, it's not exactly correct, but whatever. The point is, you get the idea. The thing with the Fermi paradox is there's all these explanations for why it's the case. I think, for sure, the fact that it takes a very long time for intelligence to emerge is definitely a factor that affects this. The fact that we have not had radio communication for that long, the fact that we're not emitting anything, we're just listening, is definitely a factor if other aliens do this. I am literally just not even considering the possibility that the aliens are killing themselves. That is stupid. Or that there's a virtual reality thing where they're not even interested in interstellar expansion. Anything like that. I'm not, or that it's too expensive. You know, all of that stuff. All of those are surmountable problems, which is why I don't think that they're like. I don't think that they matter that much. You know, so sorry, no, that's not what I was saying at all. Those problems definitely matter. They're surmountable, but they matter, and they definitely could have affected something like this. I don't think that aliens killing each other is why we haven't seen aliens. Like, that's definitely not the case. I don't think that there's a possibility that they're undetected and that they're right around here somewhere. That's not a possibility. Yeah, that they're sitting in their little VR world, that's probably unlikely as well. Those are possible explanations, but in all honesty, I think that if they're going to expand into space, then they're going to have a very similar motive as we are. Because I think what happens with more technological advancement is a species' motive becomes... The motives of the species converges. You're going to have this uniformity, this uniformity of motive, right? Also complexity maximization. It's a drive for greater complexity. That's what that is. That's the motive that's driving that, right? It's a drive for greater complexity, and it should be the same for everyone. Conflicts could still emerge with alien species, no doubt, because we don't know how they communicate or how they do things. Absolutely. We could even, like, even if we send data to them, that data could just, like, contaminate their system somehow and turn into a virus or whatever. We don't know, or vice versa. You know, there's no way to predict how any mechanical thing that they have work. The thing we can predict is what their motive would be, and that thing would have to be as close to our motivation as possible. And I'm prepared to argue that to the death, because I think that's such a core point, and that brings me to what I think the moral value of encountering an alien species is, which I think is, it would be very, very good. And not just because it would suggest that there is this opportunity for interstellar expansion. It would also just bring humanity together, right? Not just because, it would bring us together with one another, and it would bring us together with the aliens. It would be this complexity maximizing, it would be this convergence that I'm talking about, this uniformity of motive. The solidarity would emerge, because people would realize that their earthly problems are much less important than the scope of what we're dealing with now, right? And I think that is such a core, that is such an important aspect of our ethics, of our future, the future of our species, right? Which is something our ethics has to consider, because that's not just about what we do today, it's about what we do later on, what we're building towards, what we're building as a species. So it would just make things better off. People would have an understanding, I'm optimistically speaking, they would begin to understand, you know, their place in the universe, and how to think of themselves, how to think of others. You know, they would get perspective, right? I think a lot of the ethical problems that exist because people are thinking, you know, too transient and too local. They're just thinking about their own little bubble, their own little corner of the universe, and thinking, what do I do here? But if the emergence of aliens is like, well, you can't just think about that. You have to think about it. Forces you to think about the whole system. It forces you to think holistically about everything. And that's the whole theme of my channel of complexitism in general, is precisely that. Thinking about the whole system. So it's not just good because of the actual opportunities that it offers, but it's good because of how it would affect the collective consciousness, I think. So there's nothing but goodness to think about the prospect of alienism. You know, does the Fermi paradox scare me? Yes, I would say it does, because depending on what it suggests. I don't think that the VR thing is likely. I don't think that the aliens destroying themselves possibility is likely. I don't think that it's too expensive. I think that the time constraints, the fact that it takes so long to carry a signal across, and simply put, if there's aliens, they haven't figured out how to travel faster than light. But I hope to God that there is a way, because if there's just no way, then if there's no way to circumvent the universal speed limit, then that offers a very, very serious constraint upon our prospects for complexity maximization. It tells us quite strongly what we cannot ever do, which is we cannot ever expand past a certain point. And that does, in a way, localize a lot of our problems. It does restrict things down to Earth. And however long, you know, Earth has until our sun explodes to live, which is a little sad. In a way, it's sad. I mean, it's also really good because of how much time that is, and all of the good things that could happen during that time. And there's still obviously positive value there, but it's a little unfortunate that we couldn't get past that little hump. And of course, that isn't even the big thing. That isn't even the big constraint upon our species' drive for expansion in the universe. It's not the galactic speed limit. The real constraint is entropy, right? That's the next thing. You know, even if we figure out how to travel fast in the speed of light, there's still entropy to contend with, which might actually be impossible, completely impossible, which would still mean that there would have to be an eventual final end date for human civilization, which would be the saddest thing ever. But yeah, that's the case. Unless we figure out a way to, like, take energy out of other universes or something. But yeah. So when it comes to the Fermi paradox, you know, there's the communication aspect of it is so, like, finicky and tricky itself that it's no, I suppose it's not altogether inconceivable that we haven't seen any aliens. However, that recent detection that happened in Russia, where they think that they found some sort of weird signal from some other planet, I do hope that that is aliens. Right? If it is aliens, if SETI figures it out and they're like, we found aliens, ooh, that would be exciting. I just hope it doesn't happen when Donald Trump is president, because Lord knows he's not going to know what to do with that information. He'll probably ask the aliens to pay for a wall or some shit. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's the case. So I hope you enjoy this, and oh boy, I look forward to Alienism, and I pray that we're not alone. Cheers.